He was in the car with me, and he went to go pick him up, and we both crashed into each other, but it was my fault.
How did you guys crash into each other?
I will take the blame. I was under the influence. He's fine.
She was going straight, and I turned the car around, and I realized that she was not.
On December 8th of 2022, police were called to the scene of a hit-and-run accident in Somers, New Jersey, where they found an abandoned Honda Civic with no sign of a driver anywhere nearby. Officers went to the home of the vehicle's owner, Lianna Graniglia, and initially spoke with her boyfriend. As they entered the home and crossed paths with Graniglia, she immediately confessed to crashing the car while under the influence. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she smelled of alcohol. And she performed poorly on multiple field sobriety tests. She kept falling asleep during the last exercise and was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. Graniglia agreed to undergo a breathalyzer test, which revealed that her blood alcohol content was nearly twice the legal limit. In addition to the DUI charge, she was charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, failure to report an accident, and several additional citations for failing to have proper documentation for her vehicle. Number 21. Mark Grisanti.
No, you grabbed my wife from over there and dragged her over here, which was not necessary. Okay. So you need to chill out about that.
I have a camera, so it's all documented.
I don't care about your camera. Just give it a little constructive criticism, dude.
Okay.
An upstate New York judge who was captured on video shoving a police officer in June of 2020 will keep his job after a majority vote ruled in favor of a lighter punishment. 59-year-old Mark Grisanti could be heard boasting in the Buffalo cop's body cam video about how he was friends with then Mayor Byron Brown and how he was related to two officers on the force. Police had responded to the scene due to a dispute between Grisanti, his wife Maria, and the couple's neighbors. In the footage, one of the cops could be heard warning Maria to stop yelling and attempting to handcuff her when she refused to quiet down. Grisanti shoved the officer from behind while also shouting, and another cop immediately grabbed him by the arm to prevent anything else from happening. Later on in the video, Grisanti told the officer who tried to arrest Maria that his use of force was uncalled for. Another officer called him an old geezer and mocked him for bragging about his alleged connections to law enforcement. Erie County's district attorney at the time, John Flynn, declined to pursue criminal charges against anyone involved in the incident. The New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct was less forgiving, however, with at least one member calling for Grisanti to be removed from the bench. In April of 2025, the commission ruled to censor the judge in a 6-4 vote. In a statement, SCJC Administrator Robert Tembakshian mentioned that Grisanti had come very close to losing his career and that his future conduct will have to exemplify the integrity and dignity required of his position. Number 20. Robert Burke. Retired 4-star Admiral Robert Burke was once the United States Navy's second highest ranking officer. The 63-year-old recently earned a new, albeit far less dignified distinction, the senior-most member of the American military to ever be convicted of a federal crime. In May of 2024, Burke and two alleged co-conspirators, Yong Chul, Charlie Kim, and Megan Messenger, were charged with bribery and conspiracy to commit bribery. He also faced charges of performing acts affecting a personal financial interest and concealing material facts from the United States. Burke was accused of operating a scheme to score government contracts for his future employer, where he planned to work after his retirement from the Navy. He had accepted a $500,000 salary in exchange for his help landing the contracts, and the trio's shady business relationship continued despite the Navy warning Kim and Messenger to stop contacting Burke. In May of 2025, Burke was found guilty as charged. Speaking with the New York Post, his defense attorney claimed that the jury did not hear all of the evidence and were thereby denied an opportunity to understand the context of Burke's interview with investigators. Burke is facing up to 30 years in prison and is currently awaiting sentencing, which is scheduled for August. Kim and Messenger are scheduled to go to trial the same month. Number 19. Michael Granger and Leila Chaney. In early May of 2023, two Florida corrections officers were arrested for lying during a hit-and-run investigation. The incident began shortly after 3 p.m. that afternoon, when Polk County deputies responded to the scene of a single car crash. A gray Hyundai had overturned and landed on a privately owned citrus grove, costing an estimated $3,000 worth of damages. The car's owners, later identified as 38-year-old Michael Granger and 29-year-old Leila Chaney, were nowhere in sight. Officers tracked the pair down at their home in Frostproof, where Chaney admitted that she had crashed the car. She also claimed that she was the only person in the vehicle when the accident occurred, but she appeared suspiciously uninjured, given the nature of the collision. Chaney yelled and resisted arrest when deputies attempted to take her into custody. She later told law enforcement that the car had been driven by Michael's father, 63-year-old Michael Granger, Sr., and that he was hiding inside the residence. Both Michael Jr. and Chaney were charged with providing false information during a felony investigation, while Chaney faced an additional charge of resisting arrest. According to an arrest affidavit, Michael Sr. initially refused to exit the house even though it was obvious that the police were there and wanted to talk to him. When deputies finally came into contact with him, he immediately confessed to asking his son and Chaney to cover for him. Michael Sr. was treated for minor injuries at a local hospital before being booked into custody on charges of leaving the scene of a crash with injuries, resisting arrest and driving with a suspended license. He already had a criminal history which included prior charges of drunk driving and grand theft of a motor vehicle. A few weeks after his arrest, Michael Sr. pleaded no contest to driving with a damaged vehicle or causing injury while driving with a suspended license. He was sentenced to 30 days in county jail in order to pay nearly $600 in court costs and fines. Chaney pleaded no contest to both her charges and was granted deferred adjudication, giving her a chance to avoid any serious criminal convictions as long as she stayed on the straight and narrow. The outcome of Michael Jr.'s criminal case is unclear. Number 18. Beatriz Rapoport de Campos Maia. 29-year-old Beatriz Rapoport de Campos Maia and her fiancé, 41-year-old Rafael Saraev Noves, were running late for their flight to Cancun, Mexico in early March of 2025 when they got into an altercation with an airline employee at Miami-Dade International Airport. Footage of the confrontation appeared to show the couple trying to push their way past the gate agent, who ended up covered in coffee. The Campos Maia and Saraev Noves were accused of deliberately hurling the coffee at the employee and were charged with battery and trespassing, while Saraev Noves was hit with an additional charge of resisting arrest without violence. During an interview with CBS News following their release from jail, the pair denied that the coffee incident was intentional. De Campos Maia explained that she and Saraev Noves were trying to catch their second connecting flight, with plans to celebrate their recent engagement in Cancun. She claimed that whoever had accused her of throwing the coffee was a liar and that she had accidentally dropped her coffee on the floor. Saraev Noves echoed her sentiments, stating, "I am not crazy. We would not throw coffee. Coffee I drink." Some witnesses disagreed with these claims, noting the seemingly purposeful nature of the coffee spill, but De Campos Maia and Saraev Noves stuck to their story, although they were no longer sure whether they would continue on with their plans to visit Mexico. Number 17. Adarius Taylor. More than 250 suspects were arrested over a 9-day period in early May during a multi-agency human trafficking sting in Polk County, Florida, dubbed Operation Fool Around and Find Out. Included among those facing criminal charges is 34-year-old former NFL linebacker Adarius Taylor. He's accused of leaving his young child in his vehicle at the sting site, where he reportedly planned to pay an escort $60 for a quick visit. Taylor, who last played football professionally in 2020, was arrested on suspicion of felony neglect, child abuse without bodily harm, and misdemeanor solicitation of prostitution. He exercised his right to remain silent and was released from jail 5 days later on bonds totaling $6,000. The retired athlete is currently awaiting his next court hearing, which is scheduled for June 10th. According to court documents, Taylor failed to disclose to police that his son was alone in his vehicle. After learning of the child's whereabouts, the state's Department of Children and Families took the boy into its care. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd minced no words while announcing Taylor's arrest, stating, "Obviously must have hit one too many people as a linebacker because his brain cells are scrambled." Number 16. Darian Rogers. Before she landed a teaching job in the Austin, Texas suburb of Leander in January of 2025, 22-year-old Darian Christine Rogers worked at a grocery store where she befriended a young co-worker who would later become her student. 3 months after Rogers started the teaching position, a student contacted law enforcement claiming to have first-hand knowledge that Rogers was having an inappropriate relationship with a minor. The student also provided a voicemail from someone later identified as Rogers, who admitted in the recorded message to sending explicit photos to a teenage boy. Both Rogers and her young lover initially denied any illicit conduct, with Rogers claiming that the young man was like a little brother to her. But the teen caved after investigators confronted him about some text conversations they had found about the Plan B contraceptive pill. Under pressure from investigators, Rogers eventually admitted to sleeping with the student once, but the evidence showed that the relationship had started before she was hired as a teacher. Rogers was charged with second-degree felony improper relationship and is currently free on a $20,000 bond. In a letter to parents, the school's principal clarified that the alleged misconduct did not occur on school property or during school hours, and that Rogers has been banned from the campus. Number 15. Autum Cathey. On September 21st, 2023, officers responded to a reported fight at a restaurant inside Nashville International Airport. 26-year-old Autum Cathey was accused of punching an 81-year-old woman in the face and vandalizing several businesses. She was reportedly holding a cell phone with a closed fist when she swung at the senior citizen, who suffered minor injuries. The victim had engaged in a brief conversation with Cathey prior to the attack. Witnesses corroborated her account of what had happened, and officers caught up with Cathey along the airport's concourse. She had knocked merchandise off shelves and destroyed a Mexican pride display by the time police located her, and she did not become any more cooperative as the situation progressed. While officers wrestled Cathey into custody, she resisted by going limp and pulling away. She allegedly hurled racial slurs and spat on one cop's head before being taken to county lockup on suspicion of felony elder abuse and misdemeanor assault, vandalism, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. 2 months after the incident, Cathey pleaded guilty to elder abuse and assault charges. The remaining charges were dropped and she was sentenced to a year in jail with all but 30 days suspended, along with a year of unsupervised probation. Number 14. Mariah Smith. During the fall of 2017, 25-year-old Alabama nurse Mariah Jordan Smith accused her ex-boyfriend of showing up unannounced at her Tuscaloosa home and assaulting her. She claimed that the intruder had entered her bedroom, forced himself on her, then tied her hands and legs to the bed and fled the scene after realizing that Smith had given them at least some false information. Investigators spoke with her ex-boyfriend, who was able to prove that he was in a different state when the assault supposedly occurred. The investigation's focus shifted towards Smith, who reportedly admitted to lying about the attack. She was arrested on suspicion of filing a false police report and was released from jail the following day after posting a $6,000 bond. The outcome of the case is unclear, and Smith's alleged motive for trying to set up her ex remains a mystery. Number 13. Jessenia Diaz. In September of 2024, 26-year-old Jessenia Diaz was accused of trying to sneak her young daughters into Disneyland without paying. Footage of her arrest showed an officer placing her into handcuffs while her seemingly terrified kids clung to her and cried. According to police, this was the fourth time Diaz, a season ticket holder, had snuck her children into the Anaheim, California theme park over a 2-month period. According to news reports, she tried to convince security that her kids were both under 3 years of age and were therefore eligible for free admission. But the girls looked older than 3, and Diaz was given 2 options: leave the park or buy tickets, which range in price from $112 to $160. But she reportedly refused to do either of these things, prompting employees to call police to the scene. Diaz was cited for trespassing and reunited with her children after being booked and processed. In a TikTok video shortly after her arrest, she accused the authorities and park staff members of lying about what had happened, describing the emotional experience as the worst day. She also vowed to sue Disney, claiming she had proved that she was wrongfully kicked out of the park and arrested. Diaz garnered widespread sympathy from social media users after the heart-breaking footage of her daughters crying went viral. While the current status of her case is unclear, many have speculated that Diaz likely received a lifetime ban from the park, which is known for permanently kicking out its most problematic guests. Number 12. Carini. In mid-2020, a 23-year-old Virginia man named Carini entered a health clinic with one hand blown off and several fingers missing from his other hand. His face and neck were covered in shrapnel wounds. Carini claimed that he had gotten into a lawnmower accident, but investigators noticed that his injuries were more consistent with an explosion. During a search of his property, federal agents found a large amount of a chemical called triacetone triperoxide, which is a common ingredient of homemade explosives and other materials for building pipe bombs, along with a trail of blood and chunks of flesh in the room where the explosion occurred. At the time, Carini was already on probation for previous explosive-related charges. He was charged with multiple crimes, including lying to federal agents. Carini was a self-described incel, despite having a steady girlfriend. He reportedly idolized mass shooter Elliot Rodger, who murdered 6 people in 2014 and fantasized about killing hot cheerleaders. Carini also wrote about ways that he thought the 2013 Boston Marathon bombers could have inflicted more damage. In early 2023, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of possessing and manufacturing an unregistered explosive device. He was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Number 11. Rhima Coleman. At around 8 a.m. one morning in December of 2016, a woman stormed onto a San Diego-bound Delta Airlines flight at Detroit Metropolitan Airport without checking in. Witnesses would later describe seeing the mouthy traveler forcing her way past gate employees. After entering the aircraft, she demanded more overhead storage bin space. She refused to exit the plane despite being asked to do so several times by officers. Seemingly left with no other choice, officers tackled the unruly woman, who was later identified as University of Michigan assistant professor Rhima Coleman, and escorted her off the aircraft. She had a huge attitude, according to onlookers, and was dragged off the plane by her hands and feet. A Delta Airlines representative confirmed that she had been removed from the flight for failing to comply with baggage and boarding procedures. In February of 2017, Coleman pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge and was fined $500. Her defense attorney had argued that his client was treated unfairly during her arrest, but they were both satisfied with the outcome of the case. Number 10. Ethan Kirkwood. In a case that has made news headlines across the US, 20-year-old Kevan Markwood lost his balance and plunged 21 feet to the ground during a Pittsburgh Pirates game on April 30th, 2025. He was cheering from the outfield stands at PNC Park when he slipped a railing and fell forward, landing on a dirt track. Markwood was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and while his injuries remain serious, he's made impressive strides in his recovery. While investigating the incident, police found surveillance footage which showed Markwood's friend, 21-year-old Ethan Kirkwood of McKeesport, buying 2 24-ounce cans of beer. The young men were each seen with a beer in their hand during the game, and Kirkwood later went and bought 2 more beers for himself and his friend. Markwood will be old enough to lawfully drink alcohol in the United States in less than a year, and Kirkwood is not much older than him, so it probably seemed like no big deal for Kirkwood to buy his almost legal friend an adult beverage. But the law doesn't allow for exceptions, especially in a case that has left a young man with potentially life-altering injuries. Kirkwood is facing misdemeanor charges of furnishing alcohol to a minor and is currently awaiting a preliminary hearing, which is scheduled for late June. Number 9. Aloysius Johnson. 74-year-old Alice Marie Stack was killed on a Friday night in May of 2025 when a speeding Ford F-350 pickup truck slammed into her Kia Soul in Andover, Minnesota. The pickup truck driver, 48-year-old Aloysius Kenneth Johnson, was trying to race his wife home from a bar when the collision occurred. He already had a drunk driving conviction under his belt stemming from a previous incident. He would later admit to drinking several vodka cocktails before getting behind the wheel on the night of the accident that killed Stack. Immediately following the crash, Johnson ditched his truck and ran toward a nearby forest. Officers found him walking not far from the crash scene and quickly noticed signs of intoxication, including slurred speech, difficulty maintaining his balance, and an odor of alcohol. He also had blood on his face and body, but denied having any recollection of the accident. Johnson's wife claimed that she had tried convincing him to let her drive him home, but that he insisted on following her in his vehicle. She did not expect her husband to suddenly speed off in an attempt to beat her home, and was cleared of any wrongdoing. Police arrested Johnson, who is facing 1 count of criminal vehicular homicide while under the influence of alcohol. He was booked into the Anoka County Jail but is currently free after posting a $200,000 bond. Number 8. Natalia Elizabeth Wright. 31-year-old special education teacher Natalia Elizabeth Wright resigned from her position at a DeSoto County, Mississippi high school in April of 2025 after she was accused of having inappropriate contact with a male student. Several weeks later, she was reportedly seen kissing and making out with the teen outside a Taco Bell restaurant and a Baptist church. On the same day, Wright was arrested in mid-May after her husband recorded a video of her admitting to the illicit conduct, which she claimed had occurred while she was tutoring the victim at his home. She's facing a felony charge of fondling by a person in a position of trust and was released from jail after posting a $200,000 bond. Speaking with Fox 13 Memphis, local resident Shirley Hendricks wondered out loud why Wright had chosen to jeopardize her job. Speculating that the suspect knew she would get caught sooner or later, another enraged community member, Rhea Abbott, expressed disapproval of adults who take advantage of minors, adding, "I just believe they should be guiding our children to be making correct decisions instead of their influencing." Number 7. Courtnie Harris and Corvanntay Baptiste. In one of the biggest news stories to hit media headlines in recent months, 10 inmates busted out of a Louisiana jail in May of 2025 while detained on suspicion of violent crimes. The escapees, who range in age from 19 to 42, made their dash for freedom through a hole behind a toilet, while the lone corrections officer who was tasked with overseeing the cell block was on a meal break. After crawling their way out of the jail and hopping a barbed wire fence at around 1:30 in the morning, the prisoners ran into the woods and changed into civilian clothing. No one noticed that they were missing until 7 hours later, when their absence was discovered during a head count. During the manhunt and investigation that ensued, a 33-year-old jail employee named Sterling Williams admitted to turning off the water supply to the cells, claiming that one of the prisoners threatened to shank him unless he did as he was told. The inmates also reportedly received help from civilians on the outside, including 32-year-old Courtnie Harris and 38-year-old Corvanntay Baptiste, who are both facing felony charges for assisting in the escape effort. Harris is accused of transporting two of the fugitives to several locations throughout New Orleans and had recently been in phone contact with one of the inmates. According to police, Baptiste had been talking to accused murderer Corey Boyd prior to the breakout and helped him obtain food while he was on the run. The two women are among 9 people who have been charged with helping the suspects escape, including both civilians and detainees. 5 of the inmates have been recaptured while the other 5 remain at large. Number 6. Karina Laino Gomes. In June of 2023, 27-year-old Brazilian influencer Karina Laino Gomes was arrested for committing a string of robberies outside banks in Rio de Janeiro with her boyfriend, Edmilson Souza da Silva, and other criminals. According to police, the couple targeted victims who were on their way to deposit or withdraw funds from ATMs. Gomes was tasked with getting their targets to let their guards down, at which point another group member stepped in and robbed the victim at gunpoint. After each robbery, the thieves made off in a waiting getaway car. Police began to investigate the group about a month prior to their arrests, after noticing a concerning uptick in these types of crimes. The suspects were identified with help from a keen-eyed security guard who noticed a suspicious vehicle outside a bank and notified the authorities. Gomes and Da Silva tried to run from the cops, but were captured just outside the bank. Officers found a handgun in their possession and the pair were detained as the investigation continued. Number 5. Tipsy mums leave Tots alone. When some Good Samaritans saw a young child running around a Glendale, Arizona parking lot in the middle of the night with no adults around in March of 2025, they immediately became concerned for the little one's well-being. They flagged it down a passing police officer who found not just 1, but 4 children, including a baby, sitting inside a parked car. Inside the glove box and within arm's reach of the kids, cops found a large bag of marijuana. Police were still looking for the children's parents nearly an hour later when their mothers appeared. Both women reportedly smelled of alcohol and had slurred speech. One of the mothers claimed that they had stopped at a tequila bar to use the restroom and for no other reason, but the other suspect admitted that they had stopped to have one drink. The ladies then claimed that they only stayed at the bar for 15 minutes, but the cops knew this was untrue because they had been at the scene for more than 45 minutes. The women were each charged with child abuse with criminal negligence, but were spared from losing custody of their children after they agreed to participate in a felony diversion program which focuses on parenting skills. Number 4. Anna Plaksyuk. In a disturbing act of abuse that took place in Russia's Leningrad region, a married 25-year-old school teacher named Anna Plaksyuk was accused of forcing one of her students to do inappropriate things while keeping him after class with the door locked in 2023. She also sent explicit photos to the victim and ordered him to reciprocate. Authorities learned of the illicit interactions after the victim's mother discovered text messages between her son and Plaksyuk. She notified the principal at the school where Plaksyuk worked in the town of Toksovo, and the predatory teacher was charged accordingly for her crimes. When being questioned about the abuse, which went on for 4 months, Plaksyuk blamed the victim for supposedly showering her with attention and coming on to her. Many parents did not initially believe the allegations, according to news reports, and Plaksyuk's colleagues were equally shocked. No one had ever noticed any signs of criminal behavior, but the evidence was strong enough to secure a guilty verdict against Plaksyuk, who was sentenced to 9 years in prison and will be banned from teaching for a year following her release. Number 3. North Korea's 5,000-ton fail. North Korea's newly built 5,000-ton warship reached the end of its service life before it even began, following its recent failed launching. The country's leader, Kim Jong-un, was present for the ceremony at Cheongjing Shipyard on May 21st, 2025. But the grand display he was expecting almost immediately went awry when the machinery for launching the destroyer was operated improperly. As a result, the ship got stuck and parts of its hull were crushed, bringing the launching event to an abrupt end. Kim Jong-un is reportedly furious over the mishap, which he described as a criminal act caused by pure carelessness and irresponsibility. He also stated that the incident could not be tolerated and vowed swift action and severe consequences against those responsible for the failure. At least 3 people have been detained for their alleged roles in the accident, including the shipyard's chief engineer, Ong Kil-ho, the head of construction, and an administrative manager. The country's official news agency, KCNA, claims that there are no holes in the ship's hull, despite previously reporting that the stern had been filled with seawater. Satellite images showed the vessel lying on its side, partially in the water and covered in blue tarps. And while it's unclear what type of punishment the arrestees might face, the country's appalling human rights record would suggest that the outcome may be particularly unforgiving. Today's topic was requested by Brewstucky7316. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Pepperballed into submission. On December 17th of 2022, police in Fullerton, California spotted a young female driver talking on her cell phone and speeding. They tried to pull her over, but she refused to cooperate, instead leading law enforcement on a brief chase throughout the city. Officers disabled the 23-year-old's vehicle using a pit maneuver, but she refused to exit the car. Police forced her out by shooting pepper balls through her rear windshield, and the woman immediately dropped to her knees on the pavement while gasping for air. She was in a visibly emotional state even before an entire group of officers rushed over and took her to the ground. The suspect reportedly threw a temper tantrum at some point after the chase, but it was clear that the effects of the pepper balls were wearing on her. It's unclear what became of the case, and the woman's identity was withheld from the public. Number 1. Jacob Patterson.
He's running!
He's running.
Hey, kid! Over the kid! Occupants of the black Xterra and the red Corolla, come out with your hands up.
In August of 2024, sheriff deputies in Spanaway, Washington, found a young man named Jacob Matthew Patterson slumped over behind the wheel of a stolen Ford F-350 pickup truck. Members of law enforcement tried to stealthily lay stop sticks so that the vehicle would be disabled if Patterson tried to flee, but he woke up and sped off before that could happen. During the high-speed chase that ensued, he repeatedly drove into oncoming traffic, reaching speeds of up to 108 miles per hour. Patterson eventually lost control of the truck and crashed, then fled the scene on foot, leaving behind his young son, who was not wearing a seatbelt, and the boy's mother. The young woman said that she was only with Patterson that day because she was visiting her son and that the two had recently broken up. Deputies were unable to locate Patterson until 10 days later, when they responded to a report about a suspicious vehicle. The car belonged to Patterson's ex-girlfriend, who was driving. Their son exited the vehicle and was safely removed from the situation while cops surrounded the car and ordered Patterson to get out. A deputy shot the rear window, but instead of taking it as a sign to start cooperating, Patterson fled the vehicle on foot while completely unclothed. He once again managed to outrun law enforcement, but was no longer able to hide after a police canine tracked his scent to a nearby home. Patterson was found hiding in an outdoor garbage can and was booked into custody on suspicion of unlawful possession of a stolen vehicle, 2 counts of reckless endangerment, resisting arrest, unlawful imprisonment, attempting to elude police, property damage, and driving on a suspended or revoked license. Thanks for watching. Would you rather sing a song in front of a full stadium or spend a day in jail? And why? Let us know in the comments section below.